Hey, Will in Georgia Tech, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yeah, we're here.
Do me a favor and make sure that this is streaming properly on YouTube. If you follow the link from my email.
Yeah, we got.
Thanks.
Or Ms. Gosh, both have G names. Ms. And give me just a moment. Ms.
Yep.
Yeah, it's on there.
Goodchild.
Wait.
Yes, Goodchild. My favorite moment was
Is Jack Lucky giving comments?
the injection. I felt that
What'd you
it had
say?
been tightened up.
Jack Lucky's giving comments?
Oh, yeah. We have another computer up in the other Zoom.
Okay.
I'm an evidence nerd. It's what I teach, and I love it when I hear.
Well, since we are broadcasting live, I'm gonna.
I'll mute.
To something
Well, no, I was gonna say I'm not gonna say anything inappropriate.
Right.
I think
G-Tech, will you do me a favor?
Yeah.
What do you see? Wait like 10 seconds and tell me what you see on the live stream.
It's just the slide that you're showing here, just the Aura Tsunami.
G-Tech, will you do me a favor? Perfect. So that means you don't see me or any photo or anything.
Sorry, say that again.
You just see the slide. You don't see my photo.
Correct, yes.
Perfect. Okay. I probably should have learned how to live stream before, but figuring
It's
it out
all
as we go. Okay.
It's just the slide that you're showing here, just the awards.
Cool. Perfect. So that means you don't see Can I ask our tournament volunteers to unmute their, or to turn on their video so we can see all of them?
I'm going to go grab my blazer really quick though.
Am I going to be seen by the public, Justin, or just you?
You not only can be seen, this is live streamed, they can hear you, Phil.
Okay. One moment.
Nice shirt.
Thank you very much.
I can't believe it's cool enough. Audrey needs a sweater. Gosh.
Anything less than 70 degrees and sweater comes on.
Hey, Abby.
Yes.
Congratulations. You just assigned a few million judges to all their rounds on time. Nice work.
That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but
Well,
a lot.
as we wait to get started, anybody listening right now, I'm happy to brag about Professor Heller from Drexel because we had more than 10 judges per trial this weekend. We had second chairs, advocates, witnesses, coaches, bailiffs, presiding judges, tournament staff, and she assigned every single one of them to their breakout rooms on time. When people got logged off, she got them back on. So anything that worked well this weekend technologically, that was Professor Heller.
Well, thank you, Justin. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Dean, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
We're doing great. We're running ahead of schedule.
Wow, that's a rare occurrence.
We're waiting to get started, but I'm happy to introduce you to some of our tournament staff. Dean Manukin, this is Abby Heller, Assistant Director of Trial Advocacy at Drexel.
Excellent. Nice
Hi,
to meet
very
you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Abby. Thanks for your work.
Thank
And
you.
then Phil Pasquarello and Jess Falkenstein are two of my former students at Drexel, now coaches there, and they volunteered to help us this weekend.
That's great.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
And Audrey Shepard is an undergraduate at UCLA. She's my student assistant. She won the high school version of this a couple years ago.
Fantastic.
And I try every day to make sure she applies to our law school in a couple years.
Absolutely. That's great.
It's lovely to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well.
We would be great if we have all of our competitors, all of our 16 advocates turn on their screens so the folks at home can see all of you.
And Justin, we can't forget to introduce Sue Johnson either, who is one of our tournament staff.
Sue just turned on her screen. Dean, this is Sue Johnson. She's the Director of Forensics at Patrick Henry College, and she helped with our tabulation and running our trials this weekend.
Fantastic. Nice to meet you, Sue. Congratulations and thanks to all of you for the work to make this a reality. Very cool.
All right, so we're going to ask everybody, other than the Dean and Abby and myself, just turn off your videos for just a second. And I'm going to introduce Dean Manukin. It's my pleasure to welcome everybody to the award ceremony for the 2020 Trial by Combat. My name is Justin Bernstein. I'm the Director of Trial Advocacy from the UCLA School of Law, and I'm joined by my colleague.
Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Heller. I'm the Assistant Director of Trial Advocacy at the Drexel University Thomas R. Klein School of Law.
And it's my distinct privilege to introduce the Dean of UCLA, Dean Jennifer Manukin. She holds a bachelor's degree from Harvard, a JD from Yale, and a PhD from MIT. But she's not just a fantastic dean. She also knows quite a bit about trials. She's co-authored 2 leading evidence textbooks. Her specialty is expert witnesses. And she's going to chat with you for a few minutes. Dean Jennifer Manukin.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. And mostly, I'm just here to say congratulations. Congratulations to all of you for what I hear was really a pretty extraordinary online engagement. I'm sorry that the pandemic has meant that we can't gather in person, but I'm also really delighted that we're able to do this online. And I hear that you were all just absolutely fantastic. In fact, I heard that every single trial was a split verdict, and that you were all just really did a truly extraordinary job, which is, not surprising given your tremendous talents and the hard work that you put into this. But I want to say congratulations and how pleased we are that you were able to participate in this. I also want to give a big thank you to Justin Bernstein for creating and organizing this, as well as to the other staff and coaches that helped out with creating it. I think it's really a tremendous opportunity. And we at UCLA are delighted to be partnering with Drexel. I think you all heard from my colleague and friend, Dan Filler, the Dean at Drexel at the beginning. And we're really pleased to be able to have this partnership for Trial by Combat. I hope you all know a little bit about UCLA's mock trial program. If not, you should certainly be talking to Justin about it, but I suspect you already know a decent amount about it. We are just really delighted with the strength of our mock trial program, and it's a tremendously important component of our law school here at UCLA. We're pretty unusual among top law schools for having such a strong mock trial program. That's something that we've really been putting energy into. Nobody more than Justin Bernstein. And it's been just thrilling to see how that's tremendously paid off. We, in fact, had the best record in the country for each of the last 2 years. So I, as dean, am enormously thrilled and proud of that, and proud of our students who have worked so hard to make that a reality. For those of you who are thinking about law school, I should note that we do have some scholarships specifically for students who excel in college mock trial for accomplished AMTA competitors, as obviously you all are, and that our Capello program in trial advocacy, I think, is really something pretty special and distinctive. Mock trial is an important part of that, but also we have a lot of additional coursework that supports the program, and it really is a significant priority here at the institution. So if you're still looking at law school in front of you, I hope you'll take a close look at what we're doing here at UCLA. I'm really thrilled to hear that several of you who are here with us right now will be coming to UCLA. I've learned that Regina Campbell, Stephen Johnson, Natalie Garson, and Sarah Stebbins will all be with us this fall and part of our mock trial program. And Justin couldn't be happier about that, and I feel exactly the same way. So a really warm welcome to these four, and it's just exciting to be able to see the program building still further and becoming such an institutional strength. Obviously, mock trial is just a piece of what we do here at UCLA Law School, but it's a tremendous piece, and it's both, as you all know, tremendous fun, but it's also a great opportunity to build real life lawyering skills that stand students in very good stead when they go out in practice. And that's true whether you pursue your legal education here with us at UCLA or anywhere. I think mock trial is just a tremendous way to build a set of skills and abilities that will make a real difference when you're out in the legal world. Now, it may well be that some of you aren't planning on going to law school, and that's okay too. These are still skills that will probably stand you in good stead in a variety of other areas too. But I know that some of you are on the way to becoming really extraordinary trial lawyers down the road. And you will look back on these days in mock trial as part of what creates that foundation. I think the last thing I'll say is that, obviously this pandemic and this situation has changed everybody's life. I hope that you all have managed to get through this spring in a safe and healthy way. And I'm delighted that mock trial has been able to be a part of that. I'm also proud that this year, we not only finished the year with the best record in the country, but that after the pandemic began, we really became the leader in creating some programs for online trial advocacy. Obviously, we will be thrilled when we can go back to having the opportunity to be together in person rather than having to be together via Zoom and using these kinds of modalities. But at the same time, I'm really delighted that we've been able to do that. And I want to, give a virtual applause for Justin for his work in creating those mechanisms for online trial advocacy. And I'm just delighted that we were able to have Trial by Combat be part of that. So that's really all I want to say to you guys today. Besides, congratulations. Every one of you should be incredibly proud of how this went and how you did. I've heard such positive things about how these trials went. And I know what hard work it is to do this in 24 hours, but a warm congratulations to each one of you. I guess the best way to congratulate you is to just clap my virtual hands and say that we look forward to seeing what comes next for each one of you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dean.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Abby, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dean. We appreciate that. So we have a couple other thank yous that we want to make sure that we are acknowledging the people who really made this tournament possible. So I want to go ahead and start with acknowledging all of the wonderful judges that you saw throughout this weekend. And I think this tournament was absolutely spectacular. Justin and I have talked about this several times in the number of judges that we had and the quality of judges that we had. And I know that you saw that in the rounds that you participated in, through our presiding judges, through having a panel of over 11 judges per trial on average, and just the quality of judges that we were able to draw, both from the AMPTA world of mock trial and from the law school world of mock trial. And one of the reasons that we were able to do that was because we were virtual, because we could have judges from all over the country. So to all of the judges who may be tuning in because you're curious to see what happens in our final round, and to all of the judges who judged throughout this weekend, thank you so much for your time. We are incredibly grateful, and a virtual round of applause for all of our judges who participated in the trial this weekend. Now, we do have a couple other thank yous of some of the people who were working behind the scenes to make this tournament possible, because it was not just Justin and I. So if I could have, if they are in our live stream, if I could have Phil Pasquarello, Jess Falkenstein, Sue Johnson, if I could have Missy and Audrey join me on the screen, that would be great. I just would like everybody to see your faces so that they can spend some time acknowledging you and really thanking you for all of the work that you did. So this was our tournament staff of people who helped with all of our logistics, who made sure that things were running smoothly in your rounds. When there was an issue, they let us know so that we could remedy it as quickly as possible. They were our bailiffs. We also had Phil and Jess preside over a couple rounds, and we could not have run this tournament without each and every one of you. So from the bottom of our hearts, you made our lives, Justin and I's lives, so much easier this weekend. And we just say thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so appreciative of all the work that you did. Justin, can I turn things back over to you for the next section of our announcements?
Yes, before we start announcing the results, I want to recognize our 4 semifinalists. They are hoping to be in the finals, of course, but I want to recognize the incredible achievement. They competed against the best in the world, and these 4 emerged as our top 4 after the preliminary rounds. So I'm going to ask them to turn on their screens so we can recognize them together. Matthew Besman from Ohio State, Sonali Mehta from Duke, Bree Goodchild from Minnesota, and Sydney Gaskins from University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I'm gonna get a screenshot of you for, wave for me. Thank you. Okay. All right, before we get to our awards, I want to recognize some people who won their categories. You guys can turn off your screens. So when we recognize somebody as the best in their category, they can turn on their screen, that'd be terrific. So we did this by measuring who won the most check marks in that category throughout the tournament. And some of these came down to a single check mark over the course of our 4 trials and hundreds of judges. The best opening statement of the competition from Stanford, Josie Bianchi. Congratulations, Josie. Congratulations. Our best direct examination of the competition from Duke, Sonali Mehta. Congratulations. You may be hearing her name again. The best cross-examination of the competition, Ms. Sydney Gaskins, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Congratulations, Sydney. Our best closing of the competition, once again, Sonali Mehta from Duke. Notice, by the way, she won best opening competition a month ago when we had our online competition, and she just won best closing a trial by combat. Not bad. Best objections and evidence, Matthew Besman from Ohio State. Congratulations, Matt. The best use of exhibits in trial, Sonali Mehta, Duke. And finally, best theme and theory by a great distance over second place. Congratulations to Dan Peel from the University of Virginia. Congratulations, Dan. We are going to have awards mailed to the next two category winners. This is the award for Best Second Chair. We are thrilled to recognize Seva Castleberry from Duke as the Best Second Chair of the competition. Nice job, Seva. And our Best Witness for the competition, Bree Goodchild from Minnesota. Bree, before you turn off your screen, I got to tell everybody, you were as far ahead of second place as second place was ahead of 11th place in witnessing. You dominated the witnessing category. Congratulations. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Heller as we announce our top 8.
All right, so we are on to the announcements of our top 8 competitors. So starting in 8th place from Chicago, Regina Campbell. Regina, you can turn your screen on. Do we have Regina? Turn your video on, wave to us, take acknowledgement of your hard work. All right, perhaps Regina is not on the call with us, but congratulations, Regina. Moving on to our competitor who came in and finished overall in 7th place, we have Michelle Rahimzadeh from Colombia. Michelle, you can turn your video on, wave to us. Congratulations, Michelle. And then we have our competitor coming in 6th place from Stanford, Josie Bianchi. Congratulations, Josie. Finishing 5th overall from UVA, Dan Peel. Congrats, Dan. And the big announcement, the one we are all waiting for. Oh, there we have Michelle. Congratulations, Michelle. The big announcement, the one you are all here waiting for to see who is coming in 4th and 3rd place. So these would be our 2 competitors from our semifinal rounds that just happened. Finishing 4th overall from Minnesota, Bree Goodchild. Congratulations, Bree. And then coming in 3rd place overall, 3rd in the country. So impressive. From Ohio State, Matt Besman. Congratulations, Matt.
Can I get our 2 finalists on screen, Sonali Mehta and Sydney Gaskins? Congratulations, ladies. You can turn on your audio, please. Congratulations, Sydney.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Sonali. So you got the rules for the final round. I want to remind you of some of the rules before we do our witness and side selection. After this ends, you're going to have as much time as you want between then and 3 o'clock to prepare your witnesses. Remember, though, that once you start speaking with your witnesses or witness, you may not consult with your coach again. You can still talk to your second chair. So you're going to want to chat with your coach first and then start your witness prep. Does that make sense? Give me a nod or a thumbs up. Excellent. So you've already gotten the explanation of the new witness. There will be 1 new witness added, either for the prosecution or for the defense. First, we're going to have a side selection, and then we're going to have a selection of whether the witness will be added for the government or for the defense. If it's the government witness, it's the lawyer, Mandy Tuminelli. And if it's the defense witness, it is the defendant, played by Professor Heller. So oh, there she is. She's dressed and ready for the part. Do you want to introduce yourself, Kara Bassett?
Hi, all you cool calves and pachyderms. Kara Bassett.
All right. Thank you, defendant. So the selection goes to Ms. Gaskins because she has the better record from the semifinal. So Sydney, do you want to select your side and then have Sonali select the witness that will be added, or do you want her to select the side and then you select the witnesses added?
I'll be selecting the side.
Great. So that first decision is yours. Sydney, who will you represent in the final round?
Kara Bassett.
Sydney will represent the defendant. Sonali Mehta from Duke will represent the government. Sonali, which witness are you adding for the final round, the defendant or Mandy Tuminelli?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is Exhibit 4 no longer automatically admissible either way, or does it depend if he testifies?
Exhibit 4 is no longer pre-admitted, period.
We're going to have the defendant testify.
I thought you might say that. So you will be cross-examining Ms. Heller as the defendant, Kara Bassett. So that the prosecution will be calling a single witness, that is Steph Johnson, named for last year's champion. Sonali, who will be playing Steph Johnson for you?
Well, if he's still here, I'd love to have Mr. Peel do it.
Excellent. Dan Peel, do you accept?
I've actually already paired with Sydney.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is a rough rose ceremony here on Trial by Combat Bachelor. All right. Sonali, tough moment. Who are you going with?
Oh yikes. Would
Do you want me
Bree
to come
be
back
willing
to
to do it? No, it's okay. Is Bree willing to do it?
Bree Goodchild, witness champion, are you there?
I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm here. I'll do it.
Fantastic.
Woo, amazing.
Okay. Sydney, who will Dan Peel will be your Joe Kwong?
Yes, sir.
Dan Peel, the most sought after witness in America. All right, congratulations. Do you ladies have any questions before we break off and you start your prep?
I don't think so.
No.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Hey, Shahir, how you doing?
Hey, Justin, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for judging.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to introduce you and your fellow judges soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I signed on a little early just to make sure that you could hear me and I could see it and all the text.
I appreciate it.
That's my alarm. Hold on, I'm gonna turn that off.
Hey, Allie, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Thank you so much for judging.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Dan, long time no see.
Yes, sir. How are you doing, man?
We're doing great. We're in Zoom's hands now, but so far so good.
How's the technical side of the rest of the tournament been?
You know, it's been surprisingly smooth. Worst situations are somebody got bumped out of a Zoom room and they pause the trial, we get him back in. I don't think anybody's been out for more than 30 seconds, a minute or so. We had one competitor lose power in their neighborhood, and you know they've done pretty well this weekend. So things are going smoothly. Hey Brian, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's exciting. Should be fun.
Brian and Dan, do you two know each other?
Of each other, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I know you're both close to my vintage.
Yes, indeed.
It was very sad looking at the list of people and being second in the age list on there.
I know.
That really aged me.
Hey Amanda, hey Danny.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for signing on.
Hey, Justin.
Hey Zach, hey Amanda. There's Ian. I see Brandon Hughes.
Hello, hello.
Hey Brandon. I'm just taking roll. I see John Hartsfield. Hey John, how you doing? And I see Daniel Stern. Hey Dan, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really grateful that all of you are here. And I think the only person I don't see right now is Travis, but I know that he'll be joining us because he said that his dad wanted to watch the live stream. So I'm sure that his dad didn't come to watch us. So I think he came to watch Travis. So Travis will show up.
Mr. Bernstein, how are you? Good, sir. You're looking mighty handsome.
I'm glad I invited you just for that.
Yes,
how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, doing fine.
So for those of you unfamiliar with the Trial by Combat competition, this is the third year we've done it. And the students get the case 24 hours before round one. The case file, you probably saw it. It has 40-something exhibits. It's about just a little smaller than a regular empty case, but they've got 24 hours to prep both sides. In the preliminary rounds, they played an attorney on each side of the case and a witness on each side of the case. The top four advanced, and we just finished the semifinals, so you will see the two semifinal winners in just a few minutes. At the hour, I'll be excited to introduce all of you. So relax until we get started. Thank you all for signing a little bit early, and we'll start soon. Thank you. Oh, I see Travis. So we've got our full judging panel here. Amanda Bond, I should say, I love your background.
Thank you.
Are we going to be seeing your daughter on the live stream?
No,
Okay.
I'm in the separate office, and Dad's got her for a while.
Danny, you're doing a summer associate position right now, right? Are you doing it remotely?
Yes, it has been, ups and downs for sure. I'm with Jones Day Pittsburgh right now, and it's been great learning experience, but you definitely miss out on like the social aspects when you're being virtual. So they're doing as well as they can. That we did a murder mystery night. That was very fun, and
Nice.
a trivia night. So it's been good.
How'd you do on trivia night?
Okay, I mean, my team got last place, but in my defense, one of the categories was trivia about the partners and associates. And so us Summers it was our first week. We had absolutely no information about them. So I don't blame myself, of course.
Hey, Travis.
What's up?
How you doing?
Yeah, could be worse. Actually, doing pretty good. Just got rid of 2 kids. They went to Iowa for 5 weeks.
Nice. I think you and I are the old ones on the call.
Yes, that was not lost on me.
Yeah. That is one reason I had to include you, is I'm like, I do not want to be the clear-cut oldest person on the call.
Yeah. Dubious distinction.
So we were waiting for the competitors. They get, unlike in AMTA where you get months to prepare your witness for the trial, they get 15 minutes to prepare their witness for each trial, except for this final round. We added a new witness. So all weekend they've had to direct one witness and cross one witness. But now we've added a second witness to testify. That'll be the defendant. So we've given them a little bit extra time to prep and a little bit of extra time in trial. They each have 38 minutes total time to use however they want in trial. And so they're preparing their brand new direct and their brand new cross right now. I imagine they're finishing up chatting with their witnesses. They each are able to be helped this weekend by only 2 people. They get help from a coach. It can be anybody they want. And we call a second chair co-counsel, somebody whose job is to help them prep witnesses, prepare the case. And then during trial, they have their biggest responsibility. They're in charge of screen sharing and displaying exhibits. So when you see the magic happening on your screen, that is done by their second chair. Did everybody receive their ballot? Able to open that up? Excellent.
I think you mentioned this before, Justin, but every person who is a judge closed a final round. Is that right?
That is exactly the what I was about to announce. You've stolen my thunder, Shahir, but
Wow.
no, I'm teasing. Yes,
No, that's
correct.
incredible.
It's unbelievable,
Yeah,
and not just
I-
closed, but won.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember it happening, but I don't remember any details. So that's awesome to see all these folks who've done that.
So I'm just waiting for our competitors to sign in. Audrey, you don't see either Ms. Gaskins or Ms. Mehta yet, do you?
Not yet, no, but we do have the prosecution witness. I think you can probably see that. That's the individual who was previously under Caleb Brady's name.
Okay, great.
So I'm guessing that's Bree.
Great. I think I see all of our witnesses are here. So we're just, and I see our defense second chair. Can I get our defense second chair to change his screen name so that way we know who's who? Okay, it looks like we have everybody. I'm going to just do a roll call of our competitors, and you just give me a verbal yes without turning on your screen just yet to make sure that you're all here. For the government, do we have Sonali Mehta?
Yes.
Is your second chair here, Sonali?
Yes, he is.
Thank you. Is your witness here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. Turning to the defense, Ms. Gaskins, are you here?
Here.
Is Kara Bassett here?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Peel?
Here.
Excellent. It sounds like we have everyone here. We can go ahead and get started. It is my delight and privilege to welcome everybody to the final round of the 2020 Trial by Combat, the one-on-one college mock trial national championship. This tournament is hosted by the UCLA School of Law and the Drexel Klein School of Law. We love partnering with our friends cross country in Philadelphia. I also want to particularly thank Professor Abby Heller, who helped me put this tournament on and who has been thanking everybody else this weekend and deserves a round of thanks herself. I'm thrilled to introduce everybody you see on screen. So I'm going to ask our attorneys, our counsel for the round, to turn off their videos for just a second so we can focus on our judges. Ms. Shepard, I'll introduce you in a moment. You can turn off your video as well. This year's judging panel is, without exaggeration, the best judging panel I've ever seen in a mock trial. We have on screen now, everybody you're looking at, except for me, has won an AMTA national championship. All 13 of these folks have won an AMTA national championship. They've won it as an attorney, and all 13 gave the closing argument in the final round. I'm thrilled to introduce the 2002-2003 national champion from the University of Iowa, Travis McGivern. Travis, you want to say hello?
Hi.
Thrilled to introduce the 2004-2005 national champion from UCLA, Brian Caforio.
Hello, everybody.
Also from that UCLA team, Brian closed one year and Amanda closed the other. We're thrilled to welcome UCLA's national champion, Amanda Bond.
Hello, good luck.
We have the 2007 national champion and 2006 national champion from University of Virginia, Daniel Young.
Hello, everyone.
The 2009 national championship closer, who popularized the question, I'm looking for a number, on cross-examination, Jonathan Hartsfield. If you think you're original, he started it. Jonathan, you want to say hello? We have the 2010 national champion from New York University. She closed in the final round. She was almost a witness in this final round. Amanda Tuminelli.
Hi, everyone.
The 2011 national champion from UCLA, Brandon Hughes.
Afternoon, everyone. Congratulations.
The 2013 national champion from Florida State University, Shahir Rahman.
Hi, everybody. Good luck.
The 2014 national champion, also from UCLA, Ian Lampert.
Hello, best of luck.
2015 national champion from Harvard University, Zach Fields.
Hey guys, excited to be here.
The 2016 national champion from Yale University, Daniel Stern.
Hey guys, good luck. Congrats.
The 2017 national champion from the University of Virginia, Ali Piacenti.
Hey Hi, everyone. Good luck.
And our most recent national champion from Miami University's 2018, Danny Kunkel.
Hi, everyone. Good luck, ladies.
I'm going to ask our judges to turn off their video, and we'll bring you back on at the end of trial for comments. And I've got one more introduction. Can Audrey Shepard take the screen, please? Audrey is our bailiff this weekend. She's a rising junior at UCLA undergrad, a member of their mock trial team on their varsity team last year. She's also the youngest person ever to win the high school version of this competition, Gladiator. So she's going to be serving as our bailiff this round, helping make sure that our screen display is right. Audrey, thanks for your help all weekend.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
All right, let's see if we can get our counsel on screen. Ms. Mehta, Ms. Gaskins. I think we're ready to go. All right, can I get appearances, please, starting with the government?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Sonali Mehta, and I'm joined by my co-counsel, Mr. Seva Castleberry.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
And Mr. Castleberry will be assisting me with the technology involved in today's trial as we represent the people of the United States of America.
Thank you. Ms. Gaskins?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sydney Gaskins, and I'm joined here today by my co-counsel, Mr. Ethan Hudson.
Hello, Your Honor.
Hello.
Together, we're going to be representing the defendant in today's case, Ms. Kara Bassett.
Thank you. Are there any housekeeping matters? Oh, I'll let the defendant introduce herself. Go ahead, Ms. Bassett.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Any housekeeping matters from the government?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. First of all, I think that screen sharing is not enabled on the Zoom call right now.
Let's see if we can fix that. I'm glad you said that. Let's see how to do that. Tell me if it works now.
Mr. Castleberry, check. Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you very much, counsel.
Your Honor, also because of the technology, we would just like to ask for any reason if you can't hear or see us due to the internet connection, just to interrupt and let us know.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we would also like to invoke Rule 615, calling for the constructive sequestration of all witnesses.
That's granted.
And finally, Your Honor, we did want to direct your attention to that pretrial order signed by Judge Foxstein, specifically to number 7, stating that exhibits 4 through 33 are pre-admitted and may be used at any time for any purpose. Your Honor, we understand there's been a last-minute change. Judge Foxstein changed her mind, and exhibit 4 is no longer pre-admitted, but 5 through 33 still are.
That's correct.
And with that, Your Honor, the government is ready to proceed to opening statements.
Thank you. Ms. Gaskins, anything further?
Yes, Your Honor, we just want to note that Ms. Bassett will be in court for the trial.
Thank you. And I'll inform our judges that given the unusual nature of the online trial, we had previously waived the requirement of identifying the defendant as part of the government's requirement for their case in chief. So consider that satisfied. Anything else, Ms. Gaskins?
No, Your Honor, we're ready to go.
Great. Ms. Mehta, whenever you're ready, we're all going to switch to speaker view for your opening statement.
May it please the court? She planned, she poisoned, she profited. In August of 2017, the defendant, a woman named Kara Bassett, was tired of fighting with her husband. See, her husband, Don Clark, was a wealthy businessman who owned multiple properties and businesses, including a zoo. Ms. Bassett wanted control over those properties, but her husband wouldn't give it to her. So she decided to take matters into her own hands. On the night of August 18th, 2017, the defendant crept up next to her husband, stabbed him with a needle, and injected him with a deadly poison. In seconds, Mr. Clark was dead, and the defendant had access to his entire fortune. Members of the jury, that's why we've charged the defendant with murder. It's our job to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Miss Bassett intentionally caused the death of Mr. Clark. Members of the jury, we're going to meet that burden today by showing you that the defendant planned for this crime. She poisoned her husband and then she profited off of his death. I'm going to walk through each of those one at a time. First, you'll hear that the defendant planned for this crime. See, today you're going to see a very important legal document. That's Mr. Clark's power of attorney. This document explains that if Mr. Clark were to disappear, Miss Bassett would gain control over all his properties, all his businesses, his entire $8 million fortune. With that plan set, you'll hear how the defendant knew she had to make her husband disappear. So she poisoned him. Today, you're going to learn about a deadly chemical that was kept on property at the Clark Zoo, where they both lived and worked. You'll hear that this chemical was so dangerous, so lethal that just a few drops could kill a human being. You'll learn that the defendant had access to a box filled with needles and syringes and this chemical. And when she was asked by the police if she knew how this chemical could be lethal to a human being, she just laughed. Finally, you'll learn what the defendant did to ensure she got her profit. See, members of the jury, the defendant knew if she got caught, she would lose everything, every last cent. So after poisoning her husband, she drove his body to a swamp, more than 100 miles away. And then she waited. You'll see that she didn't call the police. She didn't call her husband or text her husband for an entire week when she claimed her husband was missing. Members of the jury, that plan almost worked. See, the FBI was never able to recover Mr. Clark's body. But as you'll hear from Agent Steph Johnson when she takes the stand, the defendant left other evidence behind. Forensic evidence tying her to that swamp, phone records exposing her cover-up, and GPS evidence showing us exactly where she went on that night. Members of the jury, today the evidence will show the defendant planned for this crime. It'll show she poisoned her husband and that she walked away with a profit. Plan, poison, profit. Those are the reasons that Don Clark isn't here with us today. Those are the reasons that at the end of this trial, I'm going to come back up here and ask that you find Miss Bassett, guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mehta. Ms. Gaskins, you can proceed.
May it please the court. Plan, poison, profit. That's what Ms. Mehta wants you to believe about Ms. Bassett. You see, in her opening statement, she had a lot of claims, a lot of accusations about Ms. Bassett. But here's the thing. She's not going to be able to prove a single one. And trust me, we'll get to that. But first, I want to take a moment to introduce you to Ms. Bassett herself. And members of the jury, this is Kara Bassett. The evidence is going to show that for 7 years, she was married to Don Clark. And they had something really interesting in common. They both loved elephants. And together they ran an elephant zoo. But something tragic happened to the both of them about 3 years ago. Miss Bassett, she's alone in her house. She wakes up the next morning and she notices that her husband is missing. And members of the jury, what you're going to hear today what you're going to find out is that nobody, not the government, not Miss Mehta, not the FBI, not the police, and certainly not Miss Bassett, have any idea what actually happened that night that Dawn Clark disappeared. You see, when you listen to the government's evidence, we're confident that you're actually going to have more questions than you have answers. So what I want to do is I want to ask you to focus on 3 simple questions, things to look for throughout today's trial. Number 1, where is Dawn Clark? Can the government even prove that he's dead? Second, why didn't the government ever investigate any other possibilities, any other potential suspects? And third, where is the evidence in the first place that Miss Bassett planned and profited and was connected to her husband's disappearance? You see, when Miss Mehta walked into the courtroom today, she was the one who decided to accuse Miss Bassett of killing her own husband. I don't have to tell you that that's a serious allegation. It's not something to play about. And that is why the law requires them to prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. The highest burden in our criminal justice system. And she's not going to be able to meet her burden today. Because here's the one thing that you need to remember throughout the course of today's trial. One premise that explains this whole case. The government, they chose their answer before they asked the questions. Now, as the defense, we don't have a burden, but we are going to call a witness to the stand. Joe Kwong is going to take the stand today and walk you through in depth all of the things that the FBI missed. First, Joe Kwong is a television producer. He's going to tell you that he has over 2,000 hours of video footage of Dawn Clark leading up to his disappearance. And that the FBI, they never even bothered to take a look at it. You're also going to hear that there were other alternative suspects in this case. People who reached out to Dawn Clark the same day that he disappeared. And the FBI, they never even bothered to look into it. And lastly, you're going to hear from Miss Bassett herself. She's going to take that stand today, look you in the eye, and tell you that she had nothing to do with Dawn Clark's disappearance. And that's why at the end of today's trial, I'm going to speak with you again. I'm going to walk through all of the ways that Miss Mehta and the government failed to meet their burden. How they couldn't prove that Miss Bassett planned this, how she profited from it, or any of that. Rather, we're going to talk about how the government, they chose their answer before they asked the questions. And remember, you have to presume that Miss Bassett is innocent from the beginning to the middle to the end. So when you have unanswered questions about what really happened to Dawn Clark, Miss Bassett is innocent. And I'm going to ask you to come to the only conclusion that's supported by the evidence. I'm going to ask you to find Miss Bassett not guilty of murder. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Mehta, are you prepared to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the government calls Agent Johnson to the stand.
We're going to presume that all witnesses are already sworn. Can we get Agent Johnson to turn on her video, please? Okay. So Ms. Gaskins and I are going to mute our video until there's an objection, or unless there's an objection. Ms. Mehta, you may proceed.
Agent, I'm going to be asking you some questions today. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, could you start by introducing yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Good afternoon. My name is Senior Agent Steph Johnson.
What do you do for work, ma'am?
I work with the FBI in the Criminals Investigations Division, specifically in the Violent Crime Division.
Agent, were you involved in the investigation into the disappearance of Mr. Dawn Clark in 2017?
Yes, ma'am. I was actually the lead investigator and led the FBI team in charge of finding Mr. Clark.
And ma'am, what was the result of that investigation?
We eventually charged his wife, Kara Bassett, with murder for Don Clark.
Ma'am, did you charge and arrest Miss Bassett before you asked her questions?
Of course not, ma'am. This was about a year into the investigation. We spoke with Miss Bassett multiple times throughout the course of that investigation.
All right, ma'am. Now, I want to start at the beginning. When you spoke with Miss Bassett for the first time, what did she tell you happened to her husband?
That was on August 25th of 2017. Miss Bassett called and told us that her husband was gone when she woke up in the morning.
Well, Agent, I want to go ahead and create a timeline of events for the jury. Mr. Castleberry, could we get that on the screen? So, ma'am, when was the last time the defendant told you she saw her husband?
She said it was at 9:00 p.m. that evening.
What did she tell you she did on the night of August 18th?
She said that evening after she saw her husband, she went to sleep and didn't do anything until she awoke the next morning to discover him missing.
Well, ma'am, did you find any reason to doubt that story?
We did. Throughout our investigation, we were actually able to track the GPS coordinates of a vehicle that was on the property on August 18th that clearly left the property that day.
All right, Agent, I want to break down what that GPS data says. According to that data, when did that van leave the Clark's property?
The data said that the van left the property that evening at 11:17 p.m.
Where did the van go?
It drove about 140 miles east to the Big Gum Swamp in Florida.
And Agent, when did it arrive at that swamp?
At 1:26 a.m.
How long was the van stationary at the swamp?
The van was there until 2:10 a.m. when it departed to a local airport where it arrived at 4:29 a.m.
Ma'am, did you find any reason to suspect that the person driving this van was the defendant?
We did. Throughout the course of our investigation, we actually saw that there was some algae and mud on the inside driver's portion of the van. We were able to test that and send it to a forensic lab, as well as testing some items we found on the defendant herself, her home, comparing that to items we found at the Big Gum Swamp.
Agent, what was the result that your forensic team came to?
What the forensics report found was that there was a special and complicated mix of algae that came from Big Gum Swamp that was also on the defendant's boots when we tested it.
Ma'am, did you find that mud anywhere else, that same algae combination?
Yes, we also found that on the driver's pedal, brake, and on the floor of the driver's side of the car in the van.
All right, ma'am, now I want to talk about what happened after August 18th. Did the defendant call the police on August 19th?
She did not, ma'am.
Did she call the police on the 20th?
She did not.
When did she call the police?
The defendant called the police on August 25th of 2017.
What did she say she believed happened to her husband in that week's time?
Ma'am, she offered no explanation. All she told us was that she did not know his current location.
Well, did she tell you what she had been doing in that week's time?
She suggested that she had looked for her husband, but could not provide as much specifics to that search.
Ma'am, did you find any reason to doubt that story, that she was looking for her husband?
Yes, ma'am. We were able to look at the phone records of Miss Bassett as well as of her husband. We were able to conclude that during the week's time before she contacted the police, she had not made any attempts.
Objection to lack of foundation. May I be heard?
Yes.
The question as phrased that Ms. Mehta asked the witness was whether or not this witness is able to, I'm sorry, I need to move the exhibit over. Whether or not this witness is able to tell, objection withdrawn.
Okay, you can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Agent, you were testifying about what the defendant did in that week time before she called the police. You were telling us you reviewed her phone records. Do you know if she called her husband in that week?
During that week, she made no phone calls to her husband.
Did she make any text messages to her husband?
No, ma'am.
Did she call any of his family or friends trying to see where he was?
No, ma'am, she did not.
Now, Agent, I want to ask you if you found any evidence that the defendant in this case had a motive to commit this crime. Now, are you familiar with a power of attorney document?
Yes, ma'am. That is something we uncovered during our investigation.
Mr. Castleberry, would you put that document on the screen for us? Agent, could you explain to the jury just broadly what this is?
Of course, ma'am. The power of attorney document basically outlines what would happen to Mr. Clark's assets if he were to die or go missing. That was a specific clause we focused on for this investigation.
So according to this document, what happens to the assets if Mr. Clark disappears?
They would all go to his wife, Miss Bassett.
Ma'am, do you see what date this document was made? Could you read that for the jury?
Yes, ma'am. It was on May 1st of 2017.
And when is that in reference to when Mr. Clark went missing?
That's about 3 months prior.
Agent, we talked about what Miss Bassett did before and after her husband went missing. I want to go back to the day of. Did you find anything on the Clark's property to suggest that that could have been a murder weapon?
Yes, ma'am. There was actually a storage facility on site that was full of different medications, but most concerningly, there were several syringes full of poison.
Agent, would you be able to identify what these two documents are?
Yes, ma'am. The one on the left, Exhibit 18, is a photograph of the syringes filled with carfentanil. And then Exhibit 17 was a data sheet we found on site that went over the different scientific effects of this poison.
Well, do you know how dangerous or lethal this drug, carfentanil, can be for a human being?
Yes, it's incredibly toxic. It actually is 5,000 times more toxic than heroin.
Ma'am, did that zoo, did it keep any sort of record of how much of this drug was supposed to be on the property?
They did. Since carfentanil is a Schedule II drug, they are required by law to keep track of how and when this drug is used. We uncovered a log in that same storage facility.
According to the log, how much carfentanil should have been in the storage facility?
The log claimed that there should have been 24 syringes full of carfentanil at the time we searched.
Ma'am, how many did you find?
23.
And did you ask the defendant if she knew how lethal carfentanil could be on a human being?
Of course.
What did she say?
Well, ma'am, when we asked her that question, all she did was laugh.
Thank you, Agent, for your time today. Your Honor, I have nothing further right now.
Ms. Gaskins, you can proceed.
Cross-examination.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Agent Johnson.
Good afternoon.
I want to start by talking about your search for Don Clark. Is that okay?
Of course.
You started looking for him at his own property, right?
Yes, we began our search on August 25th.
You looked for signs of blood, didn't you?
Yes, any kind of sense or of struggle we looked for.
You looked for signs of violence at the property, right?
Yes, signs of struggle.
You didn't find any of that at the property, did you?
No, we did not, ma'am.
You then went to the swamp, right?
Yes, we were able to look at the Big Gum Swamp about a week after his disappearance.
You brought dogs with you, didn't you?
Of course.
There was no sign of Don Clark's body at that swamp, was there?
That's correct. Unfortunately, we were unable to recover his body, both at the swamp or anywhere else in our investigation.
Now, you don't have a forensic report proving he's dead, do you?
Well, we certainly can't without a body, ma'am.
You don't have an eyewitness to his death, do you?
No, none of our eyewitnesses were at the swamp that evening or had information about what happened there.
You don't have an autopsy, do you?
Again, ma'am, we can't have an autopsy without a body.
That's a no.
That's correct.
It's been 3 years and you still haven't been able to find Don Clark's body. Isn't that true?
That's correct, ma'am.
So let me ask you, Mr. Hudson, can you throw Exhibit 21 up on the screen for us? Agent Johnson, this is a call log that you reviewed in the course of your investigation, right?
Yes, specifically the call log for Mr. Clark.
I want to focus on the fourth call that he got. This call was made on August 18th, 2017, wasn't it?
Yes, looks like the call was made at 6 p.m. and lasted 52 minutes.
This call log indicates that Don Clark called somebody in Costa Rica, right?
That's correct.
Now, you knew that Don Clark had a property in Costa Rica. Isn't that true?
Yes, we were made aware that Mr. Clark had a vacation home.
This call lasted 52 minutes, didn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And it says this call was at 6 o'clock in the evening, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's just a couple hours before Don Clark allegedly disappeared. Isn't that true?
That's right.
Agent Johnson, let me ask you, you have no idea who that phone number belongs to, do you?
That's correct. We were unable to uncover who the phone number actually belonged to.
You have no idea who was calling the victim just hours before his disappearance, right?
From this specific number, that is correct.
This specific number also was texting Don Clark, right?
Yes, we uncovered that as well.
You don't have an alibi for this person, do you?
Well, we clearly don't know who this person is, so no, I do not have an alibi.
Now, I want to talk to you about somebody else who called Don Clark the day he disappeared. Mr. Hudson, can you go back to those calls for me? Don Clark had a call with Lisa Clark, right?
That's correct.
This call was also the day he disappeared, right?
Yes, at 2:37 p.m.
Call lasted 4 minutes, didn't it?
That's right.
Now, you understand that Lisa Clark is Don Clark's ex-wife, right?
That is correct, ma'am.
You knew that she had threatened him in the past. Isn't that true?
We had heard inklings of that, specifically from the defendant herself.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay?
Response?
We're not offering this for the truth of the matter. We're offering it for the effect on the investigation.
More specifically, the effect you think it ought to have had?
Yes.
Ms. Menta?
Yes, Your Honor. In that case, I would amend my objection to Rule 404. This is improper character evidence, as they're using these past aggressive acts by Lisa Clark to suggest that she may have been the person who was violent towards Mr. Clark in the case we're talking about today. That's improper character evidence, Your Honor.
May I respond?
Yes.
We're not offering this evidence for propensity purposes. Rather, we're offering this evidence to prove an intent for Lisa Clark.
It's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
You knew that Lisa Clark had threatened Don Clark in the past, didn't you?
That is what Miss Bassett had told us, yes.
So of course you tried to contact this person, right?
Yes, we did.
You called her up and said, hey, do you have any information about what happened to Don Clark, right?
Yes, we contacted Miss Clark and asked if we could conduct an interview, which unfortunately she rejected.
She refused to cooperate with your investigation, didn't she?
That's correct, ma'am. She did not speak with us at any length.
She's the only witness who refused to cooperate with your investigation. Isn't that a fact?
That's right.
You don't know if Lisa Clark has an alibi for Don Clark's disappearance. Isn't that true?
That's correct. We were never able to verify an alibi.
You also don't have alibis for some of the park employees, right?
That's correct. There were 2 park employees that were not able to give us an alibi. Granted, throughout the investigation, we found no reason to believe that they were involved in his disappearance.
Well, one of those park employees was Nate Garson, right?
Yes, that was one of them, ma'am.
You knew that Nate Garson had access to that carfentanil that you were talking about on direct examination, right?
That's correct. There were multiple park employees who had access to that storage facility.
And some of those park employees, you have no idea where they were when Don Clark disappeared. Yes or no?
It was just 2 park employees, ma'am.
That's a yes. You don't have alibis for them.
For those 2, that is correct.
Now, I want to ask you about that algae that you talked about on direct examination. You said that the algae was a match to a swamp called Big Gum Swamp. I heard you correctly, right?
The algae on Miss Bassett's boots, yes, was a match to the swamp.
Well, isn't it true that you didn't even test the property of Don Clark for that same type of algae?
That's correct. We did not uncover any samples of algae from the park.
So you don't even know if the algae on her boots could have matched algae present at her own park, right?
That's correct, ma'am. The forensic report only told us that the algae matched the swamp.
Now, Agent Johnson, I do want to talk to you about something else that's really important. Out of all the witnesses that you interviewed, none of them told you that Miss Bassett was ever violent with her husband the day he disappeared. Isn't that right?
On August 18th, yes, that's correct. We had no indication that there was a domestic dispute or any kind of violent harassment that day.
And no indication of an argument either?
That's correct, ma'am.
No indication that she was driving that van? No eyewitnesses to that, right?
Well, we did have indication that she drove the van, since the car itself had the same algae that was on her boots that was also at the swamp. So that's not quite correct, ma'am. There was indication that she was driving the van that day.
Well, Agent Johnson, I'm simply asking about eyewitnesses, and you don't have an eyewitness that saw Miss Bassett drive the van, do you?
That is correct, ma'am. Yes.
You don't have an eyewitness that saw her at the airport, do you?
That's correct.
You don't have an eyewitness that saw her going from the airport back home, do you?
That's correct. We had no eyewitnesses available at the airport at all.
As a matter of fact, Kara Bassett was completely cooperative with your entire investigation, wasn't she?
That's correct. We spoke with Miss Bassett a multitude of times throughout the course of the investigation.
You said a multitude of times. That was 12 times, wasn't it?
That's correct, ma'am.
Every time you talked to her, she cooperated with you.
Yes, ma'am. She spoke with us each time we asked.
She answered all the questions that you had, right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Samantha, do you have any additional questions for Agent Johnson?
Yes, Your Honor. Brief redirect.
Take whatever time you like.
Now, Agent, Ms. Gaskins just asked you some questions about someone in Costa Rica. Do you know if Mr. Clark owned a plane?
Yes, he did. It was actually at the airport where the van was uncovered.
So, ma'am, to be clear, what country did you find that plane in?
In the United States, ma'am.
Did you review any plane records as part of your investigation?
Yes. During our investigation, we spoke at the airport, looked for any kind of documentation to show that Mr. Clark had left the country, and we found nothing.
Thank you, Agent. Your Honor, I have nothing further.
Recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Agent Johnson. We appreciate your time. You may step down. Government?
Your Honor, we have no further witnesses. We rest our case in chief.
Would you like a 2-minute recess, or do you want to proceed to defense case? I'll ask each of you. Ms. Gaskins first.
Take a recess.
Great. And let's do that. We'll make it 2 minutes, and we'll get started again. Government, ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please call your first witness.
At this time, we call Joe Kwong to the stand. Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Sure. Hi, my name is Joseph Kwong, but you can just call me Joe.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a producer. Mainly, I work on documentaries and things like that.
How'd you get involved in that line of work?
Well, so my parents were actors when I was growing up, but I've never really been, as comfortable in front of the camera. So when I got out of school, I decided to work on the other side. I applied for every intern job I could. Then I worked from intern to writer and writer to producer.
What types of things do you produce?
Like I said, it's documentaries. I work with people who want to hire me to provide footage of what they're working on and spread their message.
How did you get involved in this case?
Well, I was actually hired by Miss Bassett to film a documentary about her elephant park.
Could you tell us more about that elephant park?
Absolutely. It's essentially a zoo that specifically for elephants that Miss Bassett owned with her husband, someone named Don Clark.
What were your roles and responsibilities working at that park?
Well, my job was basically to film everything. Honestly, I would film Kara with the elephants, Kara with the employees, Kara and her husband. We even had some individual interviews with Kara too.
How long did you work with them?
By the end, it was probably about 3 years.
Would you say you got to know them pretty well?
Absolutely, yeah. I was there, 5 days a week for all 3 of those years. So I'd say I know them pretty well.
How would you describe Kara and Don's relationship?
I mean, from what I saw while I was there, it seemed pretty affectionate. They would fight sometimes, but a lot of times I saw them flirting, having fun.
And do you remember where you were on August 18th of 2017?
I do. Yeah, I was actually at the park. I think from about 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. that day.
Did you see Kara and Don that day?
I did. I saw them both during that day.
Mr. Kwong, did you notice anything unusual about their relationship on August 18th?
No. No. To me, they seemed like they normally did.
Well, Mr. Kwong, I want to ask you about something else. Do you know of anybody else who would frequently come to the park?
Well, I had seen Mr. Clark's ex-wife, Lisa, a couple of times there.
How would you describe that?
Those conversations were a lot more hostile than the other ones. One time the police even were called when Lisa was shouting at Don at the park.
What was Don's ex-wife shouting at him?
She said, "I will wipe you off the face of the earth."
Objection, Your Honor. Under Rule 404, this is improper character evidence.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. We are allowed to use this to prove something else other than propensity. Now, in this case, we're showing intent.
Response?
Your Honor, this doesn't fit that 404B2 exception. They're using this evidence to show that Miss Clark had been aggressive towards Mr. Clark in the past, so to suggest that's what he did in this case. They're using it for propensity purposes, Your Honor. It doesn't fit that 404B2 exception.
May I respond?
Yes.
We're absolutely not using it for propensity purposes, and surely it does fit under the 404B2 exception because it says strictly in the rules that you can use it for other purposes such as intent. Now, when you look at the language of the statement itself, it says, "I will wipe you off the face of the earth." It doesn't get more intent than that.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
What was Lisa Clark screaming at Don?
Well, she screamed, "I will wipe you off the face of the earth."
And Mr. Kwong, I want to shift gears. I want to talk about the FBI investigation.
Sure.
When did it begin?
Well, the first time I saw them there was August 26th, 2017. I had taken a trip to Mexico for about a week. So when I got back, they were there.
And when you saw them there, did you talk to them?
I mean, barely. I mean, they barely asked me anything.
How much footage did you have when the FBI came to investigate?
In total, we probably had over 2,000 hours of footage.
Well, did the FBI ever ask to see that footage?
No, they never did.
Did the FBI ever ask you any questions about that footage?
No, ma'am, they never asked about it.
Did you see the FBI investigating anything else at the park?
I did. Yeah, I had saw them investigating the syringes too.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the elephant park has syringes full of elephant tranquilizer in case they need to use them on the elephants. They're kept in a locked shed on the property. And so far as I know, I think maybe 12 people have the key, something like that.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation.
May I respond?
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Move to strike, Your Honor.
Let's see if Ms. Gaskins will lay a foundation.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kwong, have you ever seen anybody go into that shed?
I've seen people use the tranks before, yeah.
How many people have you seen go into that shed?
In total, I think 12.
Now, Mr. Kwong, I want to really focus on Don Clark for a moment. Did you get to know him well while you were working at the park?
I did, yeah. Mr. Clark and I spent a decent amount of time together while I was working there.
What'd you learn about him?
Well, the times we spent most together were whenever he would take me up in his plane. We would talk about everything. And he told me how he actually went to Costa Rica sometimes too. He had a house there.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay to the statements by Mr. Don Clark.
May I respond?
Yes.
We're also not offering these statements for the truth of the matter. Rather, we're offering them to prove the effect on the listener. May I make an offer of proof?
Yes.
After this witness hears about Don Clark having a property in Costa Rica, this witness then goes to Costa Rica to that property to further investigate.
Ms. Mehta?
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, if that's what this statement is being used for, we don't believe that's enough foundation to actually make that future, to make that proffer that Ms. Gaskins just offered. Your Honor, if she was only told that Mr. Clark owned a property, that's not enough foundation to suggest that he actually knew where that property was and went to the right place. They can't be using it for that purpose because it's not enough foundation to actually be used for that reason.
May I respond?
Yes, but before you do, I'm confused. I thought we heard earlier testimony that Mr. Clark owned vacation property in Costa Rica. Am I incorrect?
You're not incorrect.
Okay. So if that's the case, I guess I'll ask Ms. Mehta, if we already have on the record undisputed testimony that the alleged victim owned property in Costa Rica, what is the harm in hearing this statement?
Yes, Your Honor. The statement that I initially objected to was that he's going to Costa Rica frequently, the first part of what the witness said. It is on the record that Mr. Clark owned a property. However, how this witness knows that and what he knows specifically about that property is important, which is why I objected, Your Honor.
Last word, Ms. Gaskins.
Well, Your Honor, we're not dealing with the foundational issue. Ms. Mehta objected to hearsay. And my response to that is that we're not offering it for the truth because we're not. And as Your Honor previously stated, this is already on the record. We're not concerned with the truth of it. Rather, a couple questions in the future, we're going to ask this witness about his trip to Costa Rica.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think Ms. Mehta draws a fair distinction between ownership of the property and a plan to visit that property. And on the basis of that, given that there's no exception cited, you can still ask this witness what he did, but the statement's out.
Did you ever,
in Your Honor?
Yes, our jury of lay jurors will disregard.
Did you ever go to Don Clark's property in Costa Rica?
I did. Yeah, I've been there before.
Your Honor, at this time, I would object to lack of foundation. We know that Mr. Clark owned a property. This witness is testifying he went to Costa Rica, but we haven't heard that he actually knows the address of that property, that he actually knows the place that he went was in fact Mr. Clark's property. We haven't heard that foundation, Your Honor, and we have a good faith basis to believe that foundation doesn't exist.
Okay. I'm going to give the defense some leeway to lay that foundation, but I'm sure that Ms. Gaskins will lay a foundation there before we get any substantive information on the record. You can proceed.
Did you know Don Clark's address to his home in Costa Rica?
I did. It was in Hermosa Beach.
Did you ever go to that property?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened when you got there?
Well, when I got there, I was looking to see if I could find Don. So I kind of snuck inside of the house to see what was there.
When you snuck into the house, what did you see?
Well, the lights were off, but there was a fan running overhead. And then I saw some clothes in the closet that I actually recognized as Don's. And there wasn't a speck of dust anywhere.
Now, I want to be very clear. When did you go to Don's property?
That was June of 2018.
Why were you there?
I wanted to see if I could find him.
Now, Mr. Kwong, I want to ask you some questions about what's already in evidence as Exhibit 21. Mr. Hudson, can you put that up on the screen for us? Mr. Kwong, are you familiar with this document?
I am, yeah, these are some, or actually, I don't believe I've seen this before.
Have you seen it before you came to trial today?
Yeah, ma'am, I don't believe I was shown this before.
Are you sure about that?
I don't think so, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Kwong. We'll talk about something else. Were you aware of what Don Clark was doing at 6:00 p.m. on August 18th?
I was actually with him then, yeah.
What happened when you were with him?
Well, when I was with him, we were talking, and he was looking at his phone, and then he turned just sort of sheet white, and then walked out of the room right away.
Well, I want to ask you about why that might be. And Mr. Hudson, I want you to put Exhibit 21 back on the screen. It's already in evidence. And Mr. Kwong, I'm going to ask you to focus on the fourth phone call on this document.
Sure.
Can you tell us what this says?
It says that on August 18th, Mr. Clark got a call or placed a call at 6 p.m. To an unlisted number in Costa Rica.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Kwong. I'm going to be asking you some questions today. Can you see and hear me okay?
I can, ma'am, yes.
Now, sir, I'm going to start by talking about Don and Kara Bassett's relationship. You testified just a minute ago that they had a healthy, loving relationship. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Sir, you'd actually seen the two of them fight before, right?
A few times, yeah, I had seen that.
That's right. You'd seen them fight several times. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Including the summer that Mr. Clark disappeared. Yes?
That's right. I did see them fight in 2017, yeah.
Well, sir, you know that during those fights, Miss Bassett would say that she was upset with how the elephant park was being handled. Is that right?
I did hear Kara say that, yeah.
She thought that it should be turned into a sanctuary instead of a zoo. Do I have that right?
That was what she said, yeah. She thought it would be kinder to the elephants.
Well, sir, you actually witnessed one of those fights in particular during July or August of 2017, right?
That's right. That was the one where Kara threw a vase at Don.
That's right, sir. You watched as Miss Bassett picked up a vase and threw it against the wall. Is that right?
That's right. The vase missed Don, of course. It smashed against the wall. But yes.
That was during an argument about the sanctuary, right?
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Sir, Ms. Gaskins just asked you some questions about the trip you took to Costa Rica. I want to ask you a few more about that. Now, you told us you visited Mr. Clark's property in Costa Rica, is that right?
Yes, I did.
You snuck in the window and went into the house, right?
That's right. I was looking to see if I could find Don anywhere.
Well, sir, when you looked, you realized all the lights were off, right?
That's right.
There wasn't any food in the fridge, was there?
That's right. There wasn't.
You didn't see any toiletries or personal items, right?
Right, ma'am. The only personal items I saw were the clothes.
Well, sir, for the entire week that you were in Costa Rica, you didn't see a single person leave that house, did you?
Right. No one left it.
For that entire week, you didn't see a single person enter that house. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Now, sir, Ms. Gaskins also asked you about someone named Lisa Clark. You know who that is, don't you?
I do.
Now, sir, I'm going to show you those phone records that you were just talking to Ms. Gaskins about. Sir, could you put those, Mr. Castleberry, could we get those on the screen? Now, sir, those are the phone records that you talked to Ms. Gaskins about, right?
Yes, they are.
And you were shown these records during your 64 minutes interview, right?
Ma'am, I didn't recognize these. I'm not sure whether I was shown them.
Well, sir, like you did tell us, you just spoke about these with Ms. Gaskins, yes?
That's right, she did.
Now, I want to focus in on the calls made by someone named Lisa Clark. Mr. Castleberry, if you would. Sir, you see here that Lisa Clark called Mr. Clark on August 20th, right?
That's what it says here, yeah.
That's a few days after he disappeared, right?
That's right.
She called him again on the 28th?
That's the 23rd, but yes.
23rd, excuse me. She called him again on the 23rd?
That's right, yeah.
She sent him a text message later, right?
That's what it says there, yeah.
It says, "Why aren't you picking up my calls?"
That's what the text says. If you don't call me back, I will kill you in court.
Well, sir, she even texted Miss Bassett, right?
That's what this says, yes.
She said, "Please tell our husband to call me back," right?
That's what it says.
Sir, all these phone calls, all these text messages, they were made after Mr. Clark disappeared. Is that right?
Right, these were all after the 18th.
Sir, I'm going to compare that to how Miss Bassett acted after her husband disappeared.
Okay.
Now, sir, after Miss Bassett disappeared, you didn't stop filming for that documentary, did you?
No, we kept filming it.
The defendant never told you anything like, "I don't think I should film anymore now that my husband is missing," did she?
No, actually, Kara wanted us to keep filming.
And sir, you continued to interview the defendant, didn't you?
That's right, we did.
You're familiar with Exhibit 39 in this case, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
That's film you took of the defendant after Mr. Clark went missing, right?
That's right.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer Exhibit 39 into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 39, Ms. Mehta?
Yes, Your Honor.
That'll be admitted.
Mr. Castleberry, could you put that video on the screen and go ahead and play it for us?
My husband is gone. It's been more than a week. He hasn't called or texted or anything. I don't know where he's at, and I'm really worried about him.
Sir, this video was filmed on August 27th, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
The defendant told you she didn't know where her husband was. He hadn't called or texted, is that right?
That's right, that's what she said.
If we could get those phone records back on the screen. Well, sir, you actually know that Miss Bassett never called her husband, right?
That's what this says? Yeah.
Miss Bassett never texted her husband, right?
Again, I don't know, but that's what this says.
Well, sir, during your interview with during your interview with 64 Minutes, they asked you about this in particular, didn't they? About how Miss Bassett hadn't called or texted her husband.
They did ask me about that, yes.
Sir, in the week between when Mr. Clark disappeared and when these phone records end, there's no record that Miss Bassett ever called or texted her husband. Do I have that right?
Objection asked and answered.
This is the last question on the topic.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, do I have that right? That in that week-long period, Miss Bassett never called or texted her husband.
That's what this record says.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, nothing further at this time.
Ms. Gaskins, do you have any further questions for Mr. Kwong?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hudson, can you put back up on the screen Exhibit 21 for us? Mr. Kwong, I want to focus on the text messages from Costa Rica. Can you see those okay?
Yes, I can.
When were these sent?
6 p.m. on August 18th, 2017.
And based on what you can see from the phone records, did this person from Costa Rica ever contact Don after the day that he went missing?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so.
Thank you. Nothing further.
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kwong, you're excused. Ms. Gaskins, anyone else?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we call Kara Bassett to the stand.
You can proceed.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury? I think you're on mute, Ms. Bassett.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara Bassett.
What do you do for a living? Ms. Bassett, I think you're on mute again.
Apologies, I got kicked off of Zoom, but I think I'm back now and I'm ready to go.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Bassett?
I am the proud owner of the Baby Elephant Sanctuary right outside of Tallahassee.
Can you tell us more about your sanctuary?
Sure. Our sanctuary is a beautiful place where we save and rescue baby elephants who have been orphaned or baby elephants who have been injured so they can live out the rest of their life in peace with their fellow elephants.
How did you get involved in doing that?
So I started this with my first husband, Don. We bonded over our love for elephants. And when I first met Don, I told him it was my dream to own an elephant sanctuary, and we created and built it together. Before it was the sanctuary, it was the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park.
What was your relationship like with Don Clark?
So Don Clark was my first husband. We met in 2009, and my relationship with him was loving. We had a wonderful marriage, and our love for elephants was really something special that brought us together.
Ms. Bassett, do you know why you're here today?
I do. I know that I'm being accused of killing my husband.
Did you do it?
No, I did not kill Don. I loved him very much, and I would never have done that.
Did you hear Ms. Mehta in her opening statement when she said that you planned to kill your husband?
I heard her say that, but that's not true.
Did you hear Ms. Mehta in her opening statement when she said that you poisoned your husband with elephant tranquilizer?
I heard that too, but I did not. I would never have done that to Don.
What about when Ms. Mehta said that you profited off of his death? What's your take on that?
I felt pain. I wouldn't say that I profited. I mean, I now own the elephant park, and some people might consider that, but in comparison to losing the person you love, doesn't compare.
I want to talk about what happened the day that your husband disappeared. What were you doing on August 18th, 2017?
So August 18th was the day that Don went missing. I woke up that morning and he wasn't in bed next to me. I woke up pretty early when the sun comes up. It's usually when I wake up. He wasn't in bed next to me, and it didn't look like he had slept in bed either. I saw him the night before when I said goodnight to him, and he was in the living room, but it didn't look like he came to bed. And I remember that his wallet and his phone was missing. His keys weren't there, and the van that we sometimes use around the park was gone. So I figured that he was out.
Well, let me ask you, do you drive his van?
I have before. It's a van that we use for the park, but I also have a Mini Cooper. So that's my main mode of transportation. The van is more something you use for the park.
Did you drive that van the night that your husband disappeared?
I did not. No, I was sleeping. The last time I saw Don, I said goodnight to him in the living room, and he was watching TV, and I went to bed. That was the last time I saw him.
Ms. Bassett, when you woke up, why didn't you call the police?
So at first, I didn't think anything was wrong because I got a text message from Don. It was from the night before, but I saw it that morning. It said that he was going out for a while. So that's what I thought had happened.
Mr. Hudson, can you put that text message on the screen for us? Ms. Bassett, is this the text message that you were referring to?
Yes, he sent it late that night when I was already in bed, but I saw it in the morning.
What time did your husband send this message to you?
That was at 11:14 p.m. on the 18th.
And when did you end up calling the police?
So I didn't end up calling the police until about a week later. I believe it was August 25th when I called the police.
Has Don ever just left like this in the past?
Yeah, I mean, he will go out to his favorite spots, to the casino sometimes. He likes that. He would go out to his favorite bar. He has a vacation home in Costa Rica, so sometimes he would take trips there. So it wasn't unusual for him to go places by himself, no.
Well, you mentioned some of his favorite spots. Did you ever go looking for him?
I did. So, you know, I got that text message, so I thought everything was fine. But then I didn't hear from him, and he didn't come back. So I started to get more worried at that point, and I started to look for him.
Where did you look?
So I tried all of his favorite spots. I went first to the casino in Tallahassee. I went to some of the local bars that I know are his favorite places to meet with friends and grab a drink. He wasn't there. And then I tried the airport. You see, he has a plane and a pilot's license. So I thought maybe he had flown to Costa Rica. So I checked the airport too.
Ms. Bassett, did you tell the FBI and the government about the steps that you took to look for your husband?
I did, yeah. I mean, they interviewed me a lot, and I told them that I looked for him. I told them that when I went to the airport, I saw our van was there. So I just kind of thought at that point he was in Costa Rica. That would have been 3 days after he disappeared.
When you told the FBI that you had went looking for your husband at his favorite spots, how did they respond?
They didn't really seem interested in hearing what I had to say. And they did.
Your Honor, speculation that they didn't seem interested in what she had to say.
Sustained.
Move to strike, Your Honor.
I apologize. I'm going to change our ruling. I'm going to overrule the objection. I think as phrased, that testimony is fine.
Yes, Your Honor.
How did the FBI respond?
They didn't seem interested in what I had to say. And at the time, they were investigating his disappearance, and it didn't seem like it was important to them.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ms. Bassett, I'm going to be asking you some questions today. Before I start, can you see and hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Ma'am, I want to start by talking about the elephant park you mentioned on direct examination. Now, back in 2017, Don Clark, your husband, owned the elephant park. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Ma'am, you wanted that elephant park to be a sanctuary. Is that right?
I did. It was something that Don and I discussed frequently. I wanted to transition it to the sanctuary it is today.
Ma'am, you thought it was cruel the way Don was keeping the elephants. That's what you told the police, right?
Well, the way we were keeping the elephants, I was part of it at that time, and I didn't think it was right. I thought those elephants deserved better.
Ma'am, I know you're telling us today that you were part of it, but I want to be clear. Mr. Clark owned the elephant park. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, we were married and we ran it together.
And is that a yes to my question? Mr. Clark owned the park?
Yes, he owned the park, and we ran that park together. We worked very hard to build that park.
Ma'am, you're actually familiar with Mr. Clark's power of attorney, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Mr. Castleberry, could we put that on the screen? Ma'am, this is that document, isn't it?
Yes, Don gave me power of attorney.
Ms. Bassett, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think the audio is a little bit muddled, but we can hear you.
I will speak up.
So, ma'am, this document said that if Mr. Clark were to disappear, you would gain power of attorney powers. Is that right?
Yes, when we went to change this, Don wanted to include that disappearance clause.
Well, that meant you would get control over his properties, right?
That's correct. That's my understanding of what power of attorney is.
You'd get control of his assets, right?
Yes.
And ma'am, you did actually exercise that power of attorney, didn't you?
I did. A year after Don went missing, I exercised this power of attorney.
Well, ma'am, actually, you exercised the power of attorney just months after he went missing. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct. I apologize. We had him declared deceased a year after, but I did exercise the power of attorney before that.
Just months after he went missing, you turned that elephant park into a sanctuary like you had always wanted. Is that right?
I did. I felt like it was the right thing to do for the elephants, and it was something that Don and I had discussed.
Ma'am, you've been sitting in trial all day today, right?
Yes, I have been.
You heard testimony about the elephant tranquilizers that are kept at the elephant park, right?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Clark, could you put the, excuse me, Mr. Castleberry, could you put the records on for us on the screen? Ma'am, this is the log that was used to track how much elephant tranquilizer was on the property. Is that right?
Yes.
Could we focus in on that last rectangle, Mr. Castleberry, the very last entry in the log? Ma'am, this entry was made on August 1st, 2017, right?
Yes.
That's the same month that your husband went missing, right?
Yes.
It's signed out by CC. Is that right?
Yes, that's me. My name was Kara Clark at the time.
So ma'am, to be clear, the very last person who signed out tranquilizer, according to the log, well, that was you. Is that right?
Yes, we would use that for the elephants.
Ma'am, you know how dangerous this tranquilizer can be. Isn't that right?
Oh, yes.
You know that it's 5,000 times more lethal than heroin, right?
Yes, you need a strong tranquilizer to knock out an elephant.
And just a few drops of this drug can kill a person. Is that right?
Yes, that's why you have to be very careful when you're using it.
Ma'am, on August 17th, you knew how dangerous this drug was, didn't you?
Yes.
On August 17th, you had access to where this drug was stored. Is that right?
Yes, we stored it on the park. I was one of the people who had access.
Ma'am, I want to go ahead and talk about the day of August 18th in particular. Ma'am, you told us you stayed in the entire night. Is that right?
I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, I was out and about on earlier that day, but I went to bed around 9 and then I woke up in the morning.
On the night of August 18th, it's your testimony that you were at home the entire night. Do I have that right?
Yes, I was. I went to bed at 9 and I woke up the next morning.
Mr. Castleberry, could we get the timeline back on the screen? Ma'am, you've been sitting in trial all day today, right?
Yes.
You heard that a van owned by the Elephant Park was driven to a swamp, right?
Yes.
You heard that it was driven to an airplane, right?
To the airport, yes.
And ma'am, you heard the FBI agent who testified say that they found matching algae from the swamp on your shoes. Is that right?
I heard that, yes.
Ma'am, you're claiming today that you had nothing to do with this that night. Is that right?
That is the truth. I did not kill my husband. And I don't know why our van was at the swamp. I've never been there before.
Ma'am, I want to talk about what you did after this night. Ms. Bassett, you didn't call the police on August 19th, did you?
No, I called them on the 25th.
You told the police that you first started to get worried on Monday, August 21st. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, at first I wasn't worried because of the text message. But then after a day or two, I did start to get worried.
Ma'am, I want to be clear. You didn't call your husband on August 21st when you started to get worried like you claim?
No, I went and looked for him.
You didn't call your husband on August 22nd, did you?
No, I was looking for him.
Ma'am, it's your testimony that you got in your car and drove around the state of Florida before you picked up your phone to call your husband?
Yes, I went to all of his favorite spots. I went to the casino, I went to the bars that he frequents, and then when I eventually went to the airport, I saw the van was there, and that made me think that he drove the van there to go to Costa Rica.
Ma'am, you ended up calling the police on August 25th, is that right?
I did, yes.
On August 25th, you still had not called your husband, who you hadn't seen in a week, like you claim, right?
That's correct.
Still had not texted your husband, is that right?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Bassett. Your Honor, I have nothing further.
That's
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Bassett. You can step down. Can we get a time check, please, from our second chairs?
Yes, I believe Sonali has.
You want to just tell me in the chat? Okay, Ms. Mehta, you have 11:30, and Ms. Gaskins, you have 7:30. That's confirmed by both of your second chairs. We're going to proceed straight to closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor.
She planned, she poisoned, she profited. Members of the jury, I want to start by reminding you why we're all here today. We're here because of a man named Don Clark. When Mr. Clark died, he lost the chance to see his children grow old. He lost the chance to see the birth of his grandchildren. He's missed countless weddings and birthdays and anniversaries. We can't bring Mr. Clark back. But what we can do in a court of law is give his family justice. We can do that by holding his murderer accountable. See, that's why we've charged the defendant, Kara Bassett, with murder.
It was our job to prove to you beyond any reasonable doubt that Miss Bassett intentionally killed her husband. And members of the jury, we've met that burden today by showing you how the defendant planned for this crime, how she poisoned her husband and then profited off of his death. I want to walk you through all the evidence you heard today, starting with that plan. And members of the jury, the defense's own witness, Mr. Kwong, testified, and he told you he's seen the defendant and Mr. Clark fight multiple times, have angry fights about the elephant park. You see, Mr. Clark was in control of that park. Miss Bassett didn't get to make the decisions. She wanted it to be a sanctuary. She didn't agree with what he was doing. She thought it was cruel and wrong. You saw that power of attorney document today, signed just months before Mr. Clark disappeared. You saw that that document said, if Mr. Clark were to disappear, Miss Bassett, the defendant, would get everything. Control over all of those properties, all of those businesses, every cent of that $8 million fortune. So with the plan in place, you learned how the defendant made her husband disappear. We told you today about this dangerous poison carfentanil that was stored on the property. Members of the jury, remember what Agent Johnson told you? There were supposed to be 24 vials of that chemical, but when he searched, he only found 23. And remember, who was the last person to sign out a vial of that poison? Well, members of the jury, we showed you that was the defendant. And remember, the police even asked her, did you know how dangerous this chemical can be for a human being? In response, the defendant laughed. Next, we showed you what the defendant had to do so she wouldn't get caught. Remember what happened on the night of August 18th. The defendant drove the family van to a swamp more than 100 miles away and dumped Mr. Clark's body in that swamp. And members of the jury, we know that's what happened because we showed you the GPS records proving that it did. We know that's what happened because we showed you the forensic evidence. Miss Bassett had the same sort of algae that was in the van, that was at the swamp, that was on her boots. And members of the jury, that last part was simple. All the defendant had to do was sit back and profit. After Mr. Clark disappeared, she gained every cent of his fortune and took control of that elephant park like she had always wanted. Now, members of the jury, if you have any doubt left that Miss Bassett is the person who committed this crime, I want you to think about what she did in the week when she claims her husband was missing. Think for a moment about what someone would really do if they were in that situation. If a loved one, their spouse, hadn't been heard from in a week. Would they call them? Would they text them? Would they leave a voicemail? Would they call family and friends to find out where they were? Would they call the police? Members of the jury, in that week, Ms. Bassett didn't do any of those things. She came up here today and tried to tell you that, well, she got in her car, she drove to bars and casinos. Members of the jury, she had an iPhone in her hand. If that was true, if she was driving to bars and casinos, desperately trying to search for her husband, why wasn't the first thing she did picked up that phone and called him? She didn't call her husband because she knew he wouldn't answer. She didn't text to see where he was because she knew exactly where he was. She didn't ask if he was okay because she knew he wasn't. Members of the jury, today the defense tried to tell you a different story. They told you about someone named Lisa Clark, and it's true. Lisa Clark and Mr. Clark didn't like each other very much. But remember, in the week after Mr. Clark went missing, she called him, she texted him. They may not have liked each other, but Miss Clark was legitimately trying to find Mr. Clark that week, unlike the defendant. Well, then they told you maybe he went to Costa Rica, but remember, he owned a private plane that in the past he had flown to Costa Rica. Members of the jury, the police didn't find that plane in Costa Rica. They found it at the airport. Members of the jury, those things aren't reasonable explanations of the facts. That's the story of a defendant desperate to stay out of prison. Now, we all want to believe that a wife wouldn't do something like this to a husband for money. We all want to believe that a wife wouldn't commit this heinous crime, but members of the jury, today's trial just isn't about what we want to believe. It's not about what we want to think happened. It's about what did happen. And what happened is she planned, she poisoned, she profited. That's murder. Find her guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Ms. Gaskins, you can proceed.
May it please the court. Planned, poisoned, profited, that's not murder. That's just a catchy phrase with some alliteration in there that doesn't actually prove anything. You see, Ms. Mehta, she's been trying to convince you all day over and over again that, for one, Don Clark is dead. And that too, Kara Bassett killed her own husband with some elephant tranquilizer. Now, she can say it as many times as she wants. It doesn't mean that she proved it. It doesn't mean that that's beyond a reasonable doubt, and it surely doesn't make it sound any less absurd. You see, when you really think about it, ask yourself, has Ms. Mehta really proven that Don Clark is dead? Is it possible that he could still be in Costa Rica right now as we're speaking? Yes. You see, what really happened is the government, they chose their answer before they asked the questions. Now, when the government walked into the courtroom today, they were the ones who decided to accuse Ms. Bassett of killing her own husband. And that's why the law required them to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through all of the ways that the government and Ms. Mehta failed to meet that burden. First, we're going to talk about how Ms. Bassett didn't commit this crime and how the evidence doesn't suggest that she did. Second, we're going to talk about those alternate possibilities that I told you about in an opening statement. Why didn't the government investigate anyone else? And third, we're going to walk through the holes in the FBI's investigation. So first, how Ms. Bassett didn't commit this crime. You see, it was the government's burden and their burden alone to prove to you that Ms. Bassett intentionally and deliberately killed Don Clark. But think about it. Out of all the testimony that you heard today, all the witness statements, nobody told you that Ms. Bassett was ever violent with her husband the day he disappeared. Nobody told you that she was ever mad at him, that they argued. Nobody ever told you that they saw Ms. Bassett get in that van that Ms. Mehta claims is so important. Nobody told you that they saw Ms. Bassett wear those boots that Ms. Mehta is basing her entire case on. And speaking of those boots, let's talk about them. Because there's something that Ms. Mehta won't even talk about, something that she's hiding from you. Mr. Hudson, please put up that forensics report. She's trying to tie these boots to the swamp to prove that Ms. Bassett was there, but she can't do that. Because the truth of the matter is they didn't even bother to go to her own property, 5,000-acre elephant park, to see if algae could be present there too. Is it possible that that same type of algae was present in the watering holes or the puddles that were on her own property? Yes. And that's reasonable doubt. Not to mention there's no real motive here. You see, Ms. Mehta, she's been telling you all day that this case, it's all about money. That Ms. Bassett just wanted to kill her husband for money because they had a couple of disagreements about how to run the park. But that's a leap in logic. Just because they had disagreements doesn't mean that she's a killer. I mean, think about it. Wives and their husbands fight all the time. If we put wives on trial every time they had a disagreement with their husbands about money or about how to run the business, we have a backlog in our court system to last the rest of our lives. So when Ms. Mehta asks you to make assumptions like that, when she asks you to make leaps in logic, that's when you have to remember that's not how this works. That's when you have to remember that Ms. Bassett has the presumption of innocence. And speaking of unanswered questions, let's talk about the biggest one in this case. One that I mentioned a couple moments ago in the beginning of my closing. Where is Don Clark? I asked you to think about that question in the beginning because if we had the answer, maybe we'd know what really happened to him. But 2 statements later, 3 witnesses later, we don't have a single answer. Here's why that's a problem. There's no body. There's no forensic evidence. There's no autopsy. There's no blood. There's no signs of violence. There's nothing indicating that this man is actually dead. In fact, you have evidence on the record to suggest to you otherwise. Look back at the testimony of Joe Kwong. He took the stand today and told you he went to Costa Rica. After Don disappeared, he looked at his property. And when he looked at his property, what did he find? The fan was on. His clothes were in the closet. You may be asking yourself at this point, well, what did the FBI do about this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, let's start with the lead investigator on this case, Steph Johnson. I made sure to ask Steph Johnson on cross-examination the questions that you needed answers to, and you ended up learning about a bunch of other potential suspects that were never even investigated. I mean, let's go down the list. We have people who worked at the park with access to that carfentanil that Ms. Mehta thinks is the murder weapon in this case that they never even bothered to get an alibi for. Lisa Clark, Mr. Hudson, can you throw up those phone records again? We have Lisa Clark, the victim's ex-wife, who you know was scary. She was threatening this man up until his disappearance. I will wipe you off the face of the earth. Contacting this victim the day he disappeared, refuses to participate in the investigation. Ms. Mehta wants you to believe, oh, this person doesn't matter. Yes, she does. It's suspicious. So what did they do about it? Nothing. And Costa Rica. You also know that Don Clark had calls from Costa Rica the day he disappeared, calls that didn't continue after he disappeared. What did the FBI do about that? Oh, that doesn't matter, but it does. Because you still have unanswered questions about what Don Clark was doing in Costa Rica. That's reasonable doubt. So at the end of this trial, after you've reviewed all of the evidence, all of the lack of evidence that the government has, it's clear that the government chose their answer before they asked the questions. So I'm going to ask you to come to the only conclusion supported by the evidence. I'm going to ask you to find Ms. Bassett not guilty of murder. Thank you.
Ms. Mehta, you can proceed with rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury, Ms. Gaskins just came up here and told you that we asked you to make some assumptions. Now, I want to address what those were. She told you that it was possible Mr. Clark was living in Costa Rica. She said we asked you to assume that he wasn't. Members of the jury, that's not true. Because think about it. We showed you how Mr. Clark's plane still sitting in the airplane hangar in Tallahassee, Florida, not in Costa Rica. Mr. Kwong, the defense's own witness, went to his property in Costa Rica. There was no food in the fridge, no toiletries in the bathroom, no lights on, no one coming in or out of that property for an entire week. Sure, maybe Mr. Clark swam across the ocean to Costa Rica, but members of the jury, that's just not reasonable. Now, she also talked to you about these two possibilities, Lisa Clark and this caller from Costa Rica. Now, members of the jury, we already talked about Miss Clark. We showed you those phone records. She was calling, texting, even calling and texting Miss Bassett, trying to see, where is he? Where is Mr. Clark? Will he text me back? We have court proceedings up. I need to deal with that. Members of the jury, if Miss Clark had really killed her husband, why would she text Miss Bassett? Why would she let his wife know that he was missing? That's not reasonable either. So finally, you heard about this unidentified phone call from Costa Rica, and it's true, we don't know who placed that call. But remember, we do know Mr. Clark never made it to Costa Rica. Members of the jury, a phone call does not make somebody a suspect for murder. Out of everyone you heard about today, there's only one person who had access to that van and the poison. One person who stood to gain $8 million from Mr. Clark's death. It wasn't Lisa Clark. It wasn't that person on the phone. It wasn't an employee. It was the defendant. Find her guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. I'm going to ask our judges to submit their ballots. Before they do, I won't prejudice our jury. I'll just say that was tremendous. Congratulations on a wonderful final round. I'm just waiting for all the ballots to come in, and then we'll get started with some comments. All right, we have all the ballots in. Judges, if you want to come back to the screen, that'd be great. I'm going to do some quick math and figure out the results. I know that the advocates can't wait to find out the results. In the meantime, though, I'd ask if our judges, our national champion closers, wouldn't mind giving some comments to our competitors. Let us know your favorite moment from the trial. We'll start with the most veteran. We won't say oldest. We'll start with the most veteran competitor, Mr. McGivern.
You know, oldest is probably fair though. Wow, that was excellent. That was really great. You know, I think there are certainly some challenges that come from this format, but also some advantages that you guys showcased for us, which is fantastic because I'm actually going to have to start incorporating Zoom into jury trials starting in August. So I will say that the one thing that really stood out to me was the way that you, Ms. Gaskins, incorporated the exhibits into your closing. I really liked how you wove that into it. I wish I had seen maybe a little bit more of that during the witnesses, but I thought it was an excellent use during the closing. We're just supposed to do the number one thing, right?
Yes, please. Let's jump to Brian.
Yeah, I'll echo Travis. That was fantastic. I mean, really, really impressive you did that. And yes, since we're all going remote now, the fact you could handle that so well already, you're better than almost every lawyer we see on a daily basis. Ms. Mehta, I loved your rebuttal. I thought it was great. That was your strongest part of the performance. the spontaneity really came through, and I thought you addressed questions very well. The one thing I would flag for everybody just paying attention, the exhibit you used, though, said that the van left at 11:17 a.m., and I'm pretty sure that's what the FBI agent said also. So you had testimony that the van had actually left very early in the day, which the FBI agent gave. The defense side didn't catch that, and that throws the whole timeline, and that was all of the evidence that the defense relied upon was that timeline of the van. And I think it came in wrong, and I would have liked to see both sides capture that and try to use it and take advantage of that mistake.
Amanda Bond, I should say.
Yeah, I want to say great job to both of you. I sort of agree. I think the most exciting moments of the trial were ones where it was clear that each of you was doing something spontaneously. So I really liked, Ms. Gaskins, that you kind of took on the prosecutor's theme right off the bat in your opening statement. I liked that you kind of carried that theme flip through in your presentation. And likewise, Ms. Mehta, I liked that, you know, right as soon as you got the officer's direct examination started, you put front and center, you know, did you arrive at an answer before you asked the question? And it let her say, no, I investigated this for however long before I made an arrest. So I thought that some of those moments where it was clear that both of you were being responsive to what was happening in the trial really sort of showed you both at your best. And then I also just wanted to say it's not really something that's reflected in the scoring, but you know, because I think some of us who are practicing law now are also getting used to this new Zoom reality. I thought, Ms. Gaskins, you made really interesting choices about the background that you have, and also I think to stay seated during some of your examinations. Obviously, we wouldn't ordinarily see that during an in-person mock trial, but I found that it was really effective because we could see you clearly, you were front and center. And so I thought I wanted to just compliment you on what might have been maybe a risky choice, but I thought it was thoughtful and it paid off in a lot of ways.
Thank you. Danielle?
Yeah, the thing that was most impressive to me was things that were Zoom specific, because it requires learning a new skill or operating from a set of mock trial intuitions that must have been developed in the past 24 hours, which is especially impressive, right? So my recollection is that, you know, the way you communicate teamwork and seamlessness in an in-person trial is you kind of reach for the exhibit and your teammate's already putting it in your hand. And I think the way that gets cashed out in Zoom was kind of, you know, let's put up that forensic report on the screen, and then boom, it's there. And particularly defense counsel had a manner of doing that suggested a real seamlessness and comfort with the evidence. And that is also fun as a listener because it turns kind of co-counsel into this like off-screen character, which makes the whole trial, it infects it with a little verve and zest that made it very entertaining. So nicely done.
Jonathan Hartsfield?
Hey, yeah, great job, ladies. I think you guys did a fantastic job considering that you just got this case within the past 24 hours. I really liked, Ms. Mehta, your adaptability on objections and the precision of some of your arguments. From Ms. Haskins, you know, I like you coming off the rope straight in the opening statement with the theme flip. Yeah, that's something I'm particularly fond of. So, yeah, great job, ladies.
Thanks, Jonathan. Amanda Tuminelli?
I just want to compliment both attorneys' handling of the defendant, both on direct and cross. I know how hard it is to incorporate a witness at the last minute and be organized and thoughtful in the way that you did that. I thought that Ms. Mehta's cross-examination ended on a really strong note, and I was still thinking about it after the examination ended. And I thought that Ms. Gaskins made a great point in closing about not sampling mud from the elephant park. So those are my two favorite substantive points.
Brandon Hughes?
Great job. I particularly like the opening statements. I thought both of them were stellar, and I knew that both of you would be good, just given where you are at this point. But the opening statements really drove it home for me, like, okay, this is going to be a great round, and it was a joy to watch. I know when I started competing, I accelerated my learning curve by watching footage, watching people compete. A lot of my fellow judges, I watched a lot of their footage, and this round was great. I think it's something that students will be watching and learning from for a long time. You both should be proud.
Thank you, Brandon. Shahir?
Yeah, this was incredible. I was just like on the edge of my seat. Murder trials over Zoom. Can't get any better than that. And ladies, I want to commend both of you. You were fantastic. I am partial to closings. That is my favorite part of trial. And I thought both of your closings were just incredible. And just watching you go back and forth, pick up each other's themes, point out each other's witness inconsistencies and facts, that was just fireworks. And that was my single favorite part of the trial. I did want to commend one other thing, which is so unique to Zoom, which is running into technical glitches and not letting it overwhelm you or sidetrack you, distract you from your purpose. And I don't think I could do that. It's the most frustrating thing about Zoom in this format, and I have to commend both of you for that. I know we're only allowed to pick one, but I had to just mention that because that was just fantastic. Both of you are going to be excellent attorneys if this is what you pursue, and I hope you get to represent me, or hopefully nothing this serious, but congratulations to you both.
Thank you. Ian Lambert?
That was so good. That was a delight. First, for the defense on closing, your flow is insane. I mean, just like the feeling of getting into it. It's like that state of just terrific magnetic. You can't look away. That was awesome. And for the government, I have never seen somebody so good at balancing humor and snarkiness with this really kind, respectful, professional ethos. I think that you two have redefined sort of the models of mock trial, and I echo Brandon Hughes, my old teammate, my friend. This is going to be a learning resource for years to come. You should be so proud.
If you've never met Ian Lambert, you just met Ian Lambert. Zach Fields?
Yeah, I can't follow that. This is a really bad place in the order. Just a general comment for both of you. You were incredible. Sydney, I think you have this amazing kind of style. I mean, it was inviting, it was forceful. You put us right in the middle of the story and everything that you did. And you can't teach that. I mean, you're a trial attorney, and that was exceptional. And Sonali, I think that there's a kind of like diligence and thoroughness that often doesn't get its due in these kinds of competitions. But you were exceptional at really laying out the evidence and leading the jury to a conclusion. I think it earns you a lot of credibility. You can earn your moments and they know you're not like pulling one over on them. So you're both awesome. Great job, guys.
Dan Stern?
Yeah, first of all, great job, guys. That was awesome to watch. I had a lot of mine taken. I like other people, I loved how Sonali, you came right out and you asked whether or not they had interviewed her and asked her questions before they decided to arrest her. Sydney, I love the backdrop, and I think like you have such a nice presence and way of speaking and just delivery. And I thought the way that you position your camera and the way that you spoke, like really, those things really accentuated that. I thought the closings were both incredible, like others have said. I think one thing that I thought is that you guys both did such a good job of understanding what your strong evidence was and what your weaker evidence was, and of like accentuating that through your use of exhibits and your use of repetition. Like I just noticed for Sonali, like how you constantly focused on the lack of attempts by the defendant to call her husband and text her husband, and how that was the focus of your demonstrations. And you maybe strayed away a little bit from some of the evidence points that were weaker, like the murder weapon or the whatever else. And the same thing for you, Sydney, with I thought it was super effective how you used the idea that they didn't test the mud in the park to rebut the idea that she had been at the swamp. And you had a blow up. You had a really unorthodox blow up for that. It wasn't an exhibit. It was just a line in the report. But the idea that like that is your strongest piece of evidence, that's what you want to be putting in front of the jury. And you guys both did just such a good job of that. So appreciate your time. It was fun to watch.
Thanks, Dan. Ali Piacenti?
Hi, everyone. You both were fabulous. And honestly, I just can't speak more highly of how well you both did considering the circumstances. I think my favorite moment, Sonali, was during your cross where you sort of got exasperated and were just shocked at the defendant saying she hadn't called her husband, even though she drove around the whole state. You had me laughing. And then you brought it back up in your closing, which I just thought was a great way to come back to that point. So congratulations to you both. You were awesome.
Thanks, Allie. Danny Kunkel from the only team ever to hold the national championship for 3 consecutive years now, Miami, Ohio.
Hi, ladies. Congratulations to both of you. You were absolutely incredible. I was fortunate enough to compete at the first trial by combat a couple years ago, but I was lucky enough that it was in person. So I cannot imagine what kind of stress you've been under over the last few days trying to work through the technical aspects of it. There were many aspects of the trial that I really, really liked, but I would say that my favorite part was probably Sydney's closing. I love that you have no fear. You're not afraid to use kind of, I don't want to say harsh, but aggressive language. I mean, you said at one point that it was absurd to consider that the government had met their burden. I've got a similar style in that sense of just kind of saying what you think, no matter how aggressive it might be. So congrats to you both. You were phenomenal.
I'm going to echo everything that's been said. This was an incredible final round. I'll say that for Sonali, you won more categories during this tournament. You were first place in 3 of the 7 categories in the preliminary rounds. That's amazing. Of all 16 competitors, you were best in 3 of the 7 things. And Sydney, you made the finals in a year where you were literally the only non-senior. Sydney, this is scary for the rest of the country. She has another year. My favorite moment from, or thing about each of you for the trial is Sonali, you were just a relentless prosecutor. You just were steady and you had your facts and you couldn't be stopped. And Sydney, I've never seen somebody so relaxed in trial. Sometimes I asked you, are you going to call out the witness? Do you plan to do a redirect? And you took your time. You just seemed unhurried. I've never seen anybody so comfortable. That was remarkable. I'm glad I didn't have the stress of a ballot in this round. We left it to our 13 judges. As you know, the trophy for this competition, since it's trial by combat, is an engraved sword. As I said the first year, that's what happens when I have a budget and no supervision. And so I'm delighted to congratulate this year's trial by combat winner, Sonali Mehta from Duke. Congratulations. This was a split decision. Congratulations to Sydney. That was remarkable. Let's give her a round of applause. Nice job. Congratulations to both of you ladies. To do this in 24 hours is remarkable. To do it on Zoom is nothing short of a miracle. So congratulations and thank you to our final round judges. What an honor to have you all. This was really cool for me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for the invitation, Justin. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Congrats, ladies.
Oh, man.